WFTL.
Good morning, everybody. Time for free legal advice.
Hey, we know it's early. But what better way to start your day than by getting free legal advice? This is Vastola on the Law.
With
your
me.
host, attorney Jeff Vastola. Featuring 30 minutes of free legal advice. Call in now with your questions. 877-850-8585. That's 877-850-8585. Now here's your host, attorney Jeff Vastola.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning into Vastola on the Law. Still trying to figure out how to deal with those first 30 seconds of just sitting here in front of the camera. But for those of you that are not aware, I'm doing this show not only by the radio, but also by Facebook Live. So all of my Facebook friends out there, good morning. Look forward to seeing you guys writing in with your comments and your questions. Remember that I'm a Florida attorney licensed only in the state of Florida. So I keep having to mention this every time now because there are people watching from other states that my opinions and my advice are only good in the state of Florida because the law in your state might be different. But don't let that prevent you from calling in or writing in with a question of your own, because I can always research general issues and let you know what my opinions are on those things. If you'd like to be a part of the show, meaning if you'd like to call into the radio show and ask me any question you want, you can do that by dialing 877-850-8585. And pardon me just one second. I have a visitor in the room with me this morning, so I just have to make sure they stay quiet. Thank you very much, boys. 877-850-8585, that's the number to call into the show. Ask me anything that you want. Keep the names of the person or the company that you want to sue or whoever's done you wrong quiet. We just don't want any hate mail, if you know what I mean. But I will do my best. Good morning, Don. Nice to see you. Chiming in on Facebook Live. I'll do my best to answer your question no matter what it is. Now, I don't have a general practice. I don't do all things legal, but I can certainly research the issue if I don't know what the answer to the question is right here and right now. If I happen to know the answer, I won't hold back. I'll let you know what I think the answer is. But oftentimes, even if I know a little bit about something, I'll tell you what I know, but I'll follow up with some research to give you a fully informed decision, a fully informed opinion on whatever your question may be. And that's why I'm here every Saturday morning from 7:30 to 8 to give you free legal advice. And it's fun for me. I really do enjoy doing the research to learn more things. On tap for today, Florida has some new laws. Good morning, Mom. Chiming in from Tennessee. We'll talk about some new laws in the state of Florida. They've been going into effect kind of throughout the year. But the beginning of October is always a new rush of new laws that are implemented, so we'll talk about some of those. Talk about the importance in Florida of the 14 days. And you might be asking yourself, now, okay, what 14 days are you referring to? If you're involved in a car accident and you're hurt, just keep in mind that you have 14 days to seek treatment for what's called an emergent medical condition and an emergency medical condition, sometimes it's referred to. And if you wait longer than those 14 days, then basically you will forego $10,000 of personal injury protection insurance benefits that are there for you on your policy that you've already paid for. And the insurance companies just don't have to pay the money anymore. And so you may be asking yourself, well, what does that mean to me? I don't get it. Well, if after an accident you wait 14 days, but then you go to a hospital, for example, and you get worked up extensively because you complained about hitting your head or something, and they do a bunch of treatment, and that exceeds $10,000, which sometimes it can in the very first visit. Ordinarily, that first $10,000 would be paid for by your automobile insurance company, and regardless of fault, which is why it's kind of referred to as a no-fault coverage. But if you had waited longer than those first 14 days to go do that, then you have to pay the bill. That's $10,000 that you now have to pay just because you waited more than 14 days. So it's a very important law in the state of Florida. It's not new anymore. That was implemented, I think, back in, if I'm guessing accurately, maybe 2016 or so. It's been around for a while, but still a lot of people aren't aware of it. And people come to my office after having been in an accident, and they're not aware of it still. I think the insurance companies, in my own personal opinion, have done a poor job of informing their customers that this is an obligation of theirs if they get into a car accident. But anyway, that's one of the things I'll be talking about, and what you have to do in order to document your injury. I always want to give a warning to anybody involved in litigation about the use of social media. I've seen personally how posting onto, I mean, back in the day, Facebook was the biggest, but posting onto any kind of social media about your accident or your injuries or your life and how it's been affected, those things all become certainly relevant and certainly admissible in your case. And if you're not already aware of that, just be aware of it. It's not to suggest that you can't post anything on social media, but in my introductory letter to my clients, I always say, if you're going to post about anything to do with the accident, just make sure that you're being honest about what you're posting. Or if you're going to exaggerate, make sure it's clear that you're exaggerating. Because if you write something and it's not accurate, it will be admissible later on. There's law now in the state of Florida that, and it's not shades of gray. It really is just very clear that a plaintiff posting about issues pertaining to an accident, that is fully accessible and admissible as evidence in your case. And so your lawyer wants to know what you're posting. Make sure you share it, and just be careful, be honest. That's always the big deal. I wanted to mention just one more thing before I get into the true topics of my show today, and that is, please look at your automobile insurance policy to make sure that you have what's called uninsured motorist coverage on your policy. It's also known as and it can be referred to as uninsured and underinsured. It might say uninsured/underinsured. Make sure you have it. I know I sound like a broken record, but I had to turn away again, and I'm not lying, 2 more clients that came to see me because of an accident but didn't have coverage. It's the only way in the state of Florida to truly protect yourself or your family, anybody in your car, to make sure that if there is an accident caused by somebody else, that you'll be able to recover for that. And it's unfortunate the number of times that I have to turn people away. Good morning, Moses. Nice to see you all. I thought I would see you tomorrow, but I think I saw you chime in that you won't be there, so maybe we'll see you in a week. But it's one of those things where you don't realize you don't have it until it's too late. And it happens time and time again in my office. People come in to talk to me. And again, I do a lot of accident work. And they purchased a policy of insurance. They were told that they have full coverage. And so they thought, no matter what happens to me in an automobile accident, I'm covered. I'll be able to make a claim and I'll be able to be compensated. Well, it couldn't be further from the truth. In the state of Florida, full coverage, I say this all the time, but full coverage is a misnomer in the state of Florida, because when an insurance company or an insurance agent tells somebody that they're fully covered, really the state of Florida doesn't require that many coverages on an automobile policy. And to be fully covered, you have to opt for the optional coverages, the ones that are not required, to truly protect yourself. And if you're not aware of it, then it can come back to really haunt you. It can come back to haunt you not just in the sense that, oh, darn it, I'm not going to get compensated for my pain and my injuries and everything else from this accident that somebody else caused me. Meaning you're going to have to live the rest of your life with those problems that are oftentimes permanent without any recovery at all because of an accident caused by somebody else. Now, if it's never happened to you, you might think, well, so what? No big deal. It is a big deal. When it happens to you, and I see it happen to a lot of people, they realize they're going to have to live with this injury, which are oftentimes painful injuries, for the remainder of their lifetime, and they can't do anything about it. Only because they didn't understand their insurance policy, or because they thought when they were told that they were fully covered, that in fact they're fully covered, and they're not. So now there's a chance that you are. If you have a very good policy, if you have a fantastic agent that has informed you, then great, that's the way it's supposed to be. You can make informed decisions and you can reject coverages if you don't want them. Just make sure that you're doing it knowingly. And generally it goes like this. If you want the cheapest policy out there, it's not going to have any optional coverages on it. And when you're buying an insurance policy for your car, it's kind of like buying the car itself. You go into the dealership and you see a base price for the car, but then all of a sudden you realize that if you want leather seats and if you want a sunroof and if you want cruise control and all the safety features and everything else, all of these things are considered options, which make the car more expensive. And that's exactly what you see with an insurance policy. If you want the policy to be better, to have more bells and whistles on it, then it's going to cost more money. But, and I understand, believe me, especially this year, you have to weigh the pros and cons. And oftentimes people buy an insurance policy based on what they can afford. Just be sure that you're not being, what do they call it, Pennywise and pound foolish, or whatever that saying is. Because if you can afford a better insurance policy, but you're just saying to yourself, you know what, I don't need it. I'm never going to need this. Or one thing I hear all the time is, I've got health insurance. I don't need these coverages on my automobile insurance policy because I've got good health insurance. Well, health insurance might help you to pay the bills, but health insurance is never going to compensate you for an injury. Good morning, Terry. Nice to see you. So if you have a vehicle and if you have automobile insurance, but if you fall into that category of person to say, I really just bought what they told me to buy, and I don't understand it, I don't know what I bought, and I don't know if I have uninsured motorist coverage, then by all means just call me. Because if you can find your policy, we can have a conversation over the phone and I can ask you the right questions and I can explain what you've got and perhaps more importantly what you don't have on your policy, so that you can at least make informed decisions as to whether you want it. Because as I was about to say earlier, not only if you don't have the right insurance will you live for the rest of your life without being compensated for an injury that's oftentimes permanent and painful, but to be more practical, you could end up owing tens of thousands of dollars in medical bills for an accident that was not your fault. So, and here's the rub, you can't fix it retroactively. If the accident happens today, you can't call your insurance company on Monday and say, you know what, I had an accident on Saturday. I want to change my coverages so that now I'm covered for it. It doesn't work like that. It's whatever policy was in effect at the time of the collision, that is what you're going to have. So you have to understand these things in advance, and you have to make sure that you have the right policy. So if anybody has any questions, I always make myself available for that. You can call into the show and ask me any question you want about it, 877-850-8585. Or after the fact, you can call me and I'll be happy to discuss your policy. My toll-free number that is forwarded to my cell phone 24/7, 833-VASTOLA. That's 833-827-8652. And you can call me 24/7, especially with a topic like this. This is obviously near and dear to my heart because, yeah, I mean, some people, the skeptics out there could say, well, you're only saying this because it helps you make money. I mean, this is what I do for a living and it's how I earn an income. But really, when you see time and time again the number of people that I have to turn away because there's just no practical way for me to make a recovery for folks when they don't have the right insurance, it really is, it's unfortunate. And then I'm trying to fix it if I can. So let's move on to the topic of today, new Florida laws in the state of Florida. Some of these laws went into effect in July. Some of them are going into effect or have gone into effect in the beginning of October. But they are in no particular order. And this is not all of them, by the way. I think there was a total of, since July, I think I read there was a total of 206 new laws that went into effect. Sometimes understand that these new laws are repealing an existing law, meaning they're just making an existing law go away, or they are preventing an existing law from sundowning, which means sometimes a law, when it's created, has an expiration date on it. And if legislation is not passed to prevent that law from sundowning, then the law will go away on its own. So understand that all 206 new laws aren't necessarily substantive new laws to know and to live by, but a lot of them are. And some of them are very interesting. Some of them are kind of boring. But here's just a snapshot of some of the new ones. And remember, I like this this saying, which I've heard since I was a kid. You know, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So, Senate Bill 1084 is referring to emotional support animals. Now, this is a topic that I covered, I think, about 6 months ago when somebody asked me about, what can a landlord do to prevent somebody from having emotional support animals in a community, apartments or whatever that say we don't take animals. So that topic was covered, and if you're interested, you can either call into the show, hello Delita, nice to see you, or good morning Dan, or if you want, you can call me and ask me the question if you want. But emotional support animals, the bill prohibits a landlord from charging a person for an emotional support animal additional fees, but keep in mind that landlord is certainly allowed to request from you certain documentation confirming that the person has a disability and that the animal is certified or whatever you would call it, and also to make sure the animal does not pose a risk to the safety, health, or property of other people. It also, that same law says that it's a misdemeanor crime for providing false or fraudulent emotional support animal information or documentation. So beware to all of you out there that are putting those vests on your dog saying my dog is an emotional support animal, but yet it's really not. All you've done is you've gone to the pet store and you bought the vest. This basically is making it a criminal act to represent your dog as being an emotional support animal if it's not. Donnas Law, House Bill 199. This is a great law, but one of the things about it which I thought was interesting, it says kind of like murder. Maybe you've heard there's no statute of limitations on murder. So if evidence is found being able to convict somebody 30 years after a murder that he or she killed somebody, they can be prosecuted for that even 30 years later because there's no statute of limitations on murder. Well, this Donnas Law is similar for incidents of sexual battery when the victim was a minor. It's basically saying there's not going to be a statute of limitations on prosecuting that. But what I thought was interesting is that it's only for offenses committed after July 1st, 2020. This is one of these new laws that went into effect in July, not October. But it's saying it's kind of an oxymoron in the sense that it's saying, okay, we're not going to have a statute of limitations anymore, so we're going to be able to prosecute people 50, 60, 70 years later, but it applies to offenses committed after July 1st, 2020. I suspect that has something to do with a constitutional issue, but I'm not exactly sure why. Senate Bill 172, Florida's Drug and Cosmetic Act. This is interesting. This was an affirmative measure to a countermeasure to something that Key West had done, municipality. So basically it says the bill expressly preempts to the state, which means now the state, as the governing authority, regulates all over-the-counter proprietary drugs and cosmetics, and the bill specifically says which includes sunscreen. You say, okay, well, why? What is the importance of sunscreen? And that's exactly what I did. The bill goes on to say Key West passed a sunscreen ban but delayed its implementation until 2021. So essentially, Key West, the municipality, created its own law that said you can't use sunscreen, but this law is not going to go into effect until 2021. So what Governor DeSantis did, and Florida politicians, is they proactively gave all power to the state to regulate. So basically, the state of Florida is going to supersede Key West, the municipality, or the city, from putting this law into effect. But, like me, I scratched my head and said, why in the world would they want to prohibit sunscreen? It doesn't make any sense. So I went and you go to Google and you can find the answer relatively easily. It's actually for a good reason. And so now I'm kind of wondering, well, why did they pass this law saying that Key West is not allowed to self-regulate? The ban on sunscreen is because the sunscreen has chemicals that are affecting the coral reefs. It's causing what they call coral bleaching. And so Key West was proactively trying to protect the coral reefs by telling people, if you're going to get in the water, if you're going to scuba dive, if you're going to snorkel, if you're going to spearfish, if you're going to do all these things around the reefs, you can't do it with sunscreen on. But for whatever reason, the Florida legislature said, you know what, we're not going to let Key West regulate that. The state of Florida is going to regulate that. Now, I don't know what the state of Florida is going to do to protect the coral reefs, but hopefully they'll find some measure that makes sense. So, moving on. Let me see. There's a verification of employment eligibility, which is interesting now. It's online if you're an employer, and they're saying you have to use this EVerify online to make sure that your employees are authorized to work in the state of Florida, and it's relatively easily. They said 98.5% of the persons run through EVerify were automatically confirmed. Somebody's already calling me. I'm still on the show, so I've got about 7 minutes left before I can take that phone call. House Bill 971 talks about electric bikes and how they're going to be regulated now. House Bill 641, funds for schools. This increased the minimum base salary for new full-time teachers to $47,500. House Bill 177 talks about prescription drug donation, which you can read that if you want. Senate Bill 404 talks about parental consent for minors' abortions. Now, in order for a physician or a facility to perform an abortion, the minor has to provide a notarized written consent statement from the mother, the father, or the legal guardian, and the written consent document has to have very specific language in it, and whoever's going to perform the procedure also has to confirm the identification of the parent or the guardian of the minor. So they're just making it a little bit more difficult, a little bit more strict to go ahead and get an abortion if you are a minor. House Bill 1135 talks about the state's specialty license plate program, which I don't really care about this, except I thought it was funny that most of these license plates, House Bill 387 sets a $5 fee for most specialty license plates, but if you are an Auburn, Alabama, or Georgia fan, they're sticking it to you. You got to pay $50. I thought that was funny. Somebody's going to bring a claim of discrimination based on where they graduated. Let me see. House Bill 205. This is interesting because, of course, nowadays everybody is offering incentives, programs to military or ex-military. And, of course, you know, the fraudulent folks out there are willing to grasp onto that and get, you know, a half-price cup of coffee whenever they can. Well, House Bill 205, it's an expansion of an existing state law, but it's designed to prevent people from misrepresenting service in the military. And now what they've done is they've made it a criminal. It's going to be a third-degree felony to make misrepresentations of prior military to land a job or a political office. So, I mean, you can still lie and get a half-price cup of coffee if you want, but I do like the fact that they're making these laws and protecting those, in a sense, those that actually did serve. So, similarly, Senate Bill 294, which create the Florida Veterans Protection Act, makes it a first-degree felony to obtain or attempt to swindle $50,000 or more from 10 or more military veterans. So this is one of those laws that's targeting these scams that go out there and, you know, you get the phone call on your phone or you get something in the mail. It ends up being a scam, but I don't know why they said it has to be 10 or more military veterans. There must be a reason for that, but I didn't look into it. I am running out of time. I just want to get to a couple more of these. And then, of course, if anybody wants to talk to me after the show, just feel free to call me on my cell phone. The number is 833-VASTOLA, which is 833-827-8652. Senate Bill 680 is an expansion of a 2017 law, but it increases the penalties for people who remove the fins from sharks and discard the rest of the sharks in the ocean. Great law. I love it. It, of course, has some exceptions to it because there are people that have licenses to fish for sharks. But anybody that is killing sharks for the fins specifically is going to be violative of this new law, and they'll be subject to criminal prosecution for doing that. So, and this of course doesn't have anything to do with the existing cruelty to animals. I don't know if anybody ever saw that. There's a YouTube video of these guys that were fishing and they caught a shark, and they ended up dragging the shark behind their boat, and they killed the shark by dragging it. They were prosecuted for cruelty to animals, and so I think I'm in support of that as well. House Bill 333 prohibits courts from granting bail to adult defendants who are appealing convictions in cases that require registering as sexual offenders or sexual predators, and in which the victims were minors. Hello, Aunt Vicky. Nice to see you this morning. I think it's a fantastic law. Let me see what else is in here. House Bill 675, which allows law enforcement officers now to make warrantless arrests for indecent exposure. It's a new law. Currently, the way the law used to be, the officers actually had to witness the incident in order to make that arrest, despite if there were eyewitness accounts or not. So now officers can rely on eyewitness accounts to make that arrest. Let me see. I am probably running out of time here. VJ, you with me? That's our board operator today, VJ. I think he's going to be telling me I've got about 30 seconds left. Let me see if there's any other laws. I've got a couple of interesting cases. Well, Facebook Live, it's just you and me. That person that was calling into my show was my board operator saying that he lost the connection. So unfortunately, I am just about out of time anyway. I mean, I guess I don't have a time limit for Facebook Live, but I am going to save for next week a couple of really interesting cases in my Florida Law Weekly. So tune in next week. That's your teaser. If anybody would like to talk to me about any kind of an accident case, call me at 833-VASTOLA. If you've got questions that don't have anything to do with an accident case, you can certainly call me at the same number. I will probably encourage you to call me on the radio show on a Saturday morning, because the interaction, of course, makes the show more interesting. Delita, I will, depending on what the issues are. I see your question. Do I do landlord-tenant cases? I have done a lot of that in the past. I would suggest you look at Florida Statute 83, see if your answer is in there. But if you have any questions, Delita, just give me a call. All right. Signing off, everyone. Have a great weekend. Stay dry. Bye-bye.